The Free Enterprise Society was formed over 30 years ago by a group of individuals who were very concerned about the simultaneous expansion of bureaucracy, erosion of individual rights, and plunder of private wealth by slick government debt and taxing schemes. Their mission is to promote free enterprise worldwide and restore lost liberties and freedoms in America under the organic national constitution of the Republic of the United States of America. To further their goals, the Free Enterprise Society arranges training and seminars to educate the people across the country. Joe Banister, former IRS Special Agent. Joe is believed to be the first and only IRS Criminal Investigation Division Special Agent ever to conduct an off-duty investigation about claims that the federal income tax is fraudulently administered and enforced, and then confront top IRS officials about the validity of those claims. After confronting said officials, including his own supervisors, he was encouraged to resign. He resigned from the IRS on February 25, 1999. Joe is a graduate of San Jose State University, earning a bachelor's degree in accounting. He earned a certified public accountant certificate from the state of California in 1991, but left the practice of public accounting in 1993 to accept appointment to the Department of the Treasury, IRS Criminal Investigation Division, as a special agent. In addition to his investigative duties as a sworn federal law enforcement officer, Mr. Banister was appointed the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force Coordinator and Asset Forfeiture Coordinator for the IRS Central California District. He qualified as an expert marksman and assisted with firearms and defensive tactics training. When Joe was faced with the reality that the Internal Revenue Service had no intention of addressing these serious issues, he knew he had a moral and ethical duty to inform the American people not only about his investigation, but about the failure of the Internal Revenue Service to provide any rebuttal to his research and the agency's suspicious reluctance to discuss the matter at all. He has been doing so since his 1999 resignation from the IRS. For more information, visit www.josephbanister.com and www.freedomabovefortune.com. Joe Banister is featured in Aaron Russo's critically praised documentary, America, Freedom to Fascism. Favored fed to enemy of the state in 2 years flat. How one of the IRS's own criminal investigators blew the whistle on the fraudulent administration and enforcement of the federal income tax. Joe Banister will describe his transformation from favored federal agent to enemy of the state for simply pursuing and speaking up about the truth. During the 8 years since his IRS resignation, the IRS and U.S. Department of Justice, with the help of a largely complicit mainstream media, have pulled every dirty trick in the book to discredit and silence him, including soiling his reputation with accusations of defrauding the United States of America. Joe's presentation will expose the various efforts the government and media have used to discredit him so that you can judge for yourself whether or not his efforts are sincere and whether or not the IRS is truly committing fraud against the American people. Don't miss this enlightening and vital presentation about what affects all Americans by former IRS insider and now brave whistleblower Joe Banister.
All right, the next speaker, I'm really proud to bring you. I met him first time in 1999, and we met at a restaurant, and he hands me his business card. And on the business card it says, Internal Revenue Service Special Criminal Investigator. I still have that card. I didn't really know what to make of him at first, because he's saying, well, I'm investigating these issues that you guys are bringing up, and I'm not investigating you, I'm investigating these issues. But over the years, I mean, he wrote you may know, he did do a research on some of the issues that we're going to talk about, and he'll tell you maybe a little bit about that. But I just find him to be one of the most genuine, honest, and forthright people I've ever met. If more people had this kind of integrity, we wouldn't need to have these conferences. We'd be a big, happy country here. He was with the Internal Revenue Service, a criminal investigator with the Criminal Investigation Division. Now he is private, doing accounting work and talking about his beliefs on the income tax. Help me welcome Joe Banister.
Thanks, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Good. We're going to get into some technical things here, so watch out. Cover your eyes. Sparks. All right, well, thank you all for coming. I recognize some faces, and some of us just can't stay away, right?
That's right. Stay away.
We can't stop fighting for liberty and justice. One of those people, and that's why I don't work for the IRS anymore, I guess. A long time ago, I never really had a title for my talk, so I came up with Favored Fed to Enemy of the State in 11 Years Flat. That's a picture of me, the Palo Alto Weekly, back in about 1998. During the time when I was actually doing my investigation of the federal income tax, took a picture of me at a Citizens Police Academy in East Palo Alto, California. And so this was actually a pitch dark conference room, and but you wouldn't know it. I mean, he must have opened up the aperture quite a bit and took this shot of me. I was making a demonstration, and that gun that you see in my left hand is a real Sig Sauer 9mm, but it's been gutted to place inside of it some CO2 contraption that basically allows the slide to cycle back and forth just like a real gun would. And then if you can see that little black tube that comes down like that goes to the CO2 canister to actually allow the gun to cycle. And inside is a laser. And so basically you would point that gun at a screen that was kind of like this. It would actually be from the floor to that high. So it would register a human body in regular size. And so you would fire at these at people. And you would have to have a good guy, bad guy type scenario. And you don't want to shoot the good guys, and you want to shoot the bad guys. But you only want to shoot the bad guys if there's sufficient cause to do so. So the nice thing is that rather than using real rounds, and say, oops, sorry that I shot you in the head, you can actually use a laser and red dots, and nobody gets hurt. So the IRS is probably upset that I had that picture, because they would presume, they used to tell the public that I never even worked there. Well, I come from a family of terrorists. My brother, I don't know how well that picture shows up, but the far left is my brother John. He's a sergeant in California Highway Patrol. So if you're ever in the South Bay area, watch out. I don't think he's on the road as much being a sergeant. He's buried in paperwork. Next to him is my baby brother Jeff. He's a police officer with the San Jose Police Department. And I think he's been there now for 15 years or so. In the middle is my mother Ann. My father Ron passed away in 1993, just before I went into work for the IRS. Next is Jim, the big guy here. He just tested for battalion chief with the Daly City Fire Department and tested at number 1. So he's going to be a battalion chief for Daly City. And then I'm the skinny pencil neck guy right here. And I have a little treasury badge and the gun, which were taken from me when I started to speak up a little bit. Well, I call the days before and after my enlightenment, the pre-enlightenment and post-enlightenment days at the IRS, and interesting little environmental things that were going on there. I came from the outside world, shall we say, the private sector. Unlike many IRS agents who will go into the IRS right after high school or right after college, I had quite a bit of time outside in public industry, private industry. So my first day on the job, before I was even sworn in, I had nothing to do. And because I was somebody that liked to work, to earn a living and not just sit there for a paycheck, I looked around for something to do, and I saw these volumes of the Internal Revenue Code. And how many people have seen the Internal Revenue Code? Okay. I figure you would. It's pretty thick, right? So I thought, well, that'll take up some time. I'll start to look at the actual sections that I would be investigating. So Title 26 is the Internal Revenue Code. Section 7201 is tax evasion. Okay, 7203, Section 7203 is about not or failing to file a tax return willfully. 7206, Sub 1 and Sub 2. So I went to look through these sections, and being a CPA and having come from the private sector, I wasn't afraid of doing research. In fact, many times for clients, that's what they want you to do, right? Because you're fighting the IRS for them, and they want you to show the law and win. So I got to the IRS, and I just opened up the books, and my boss, he was a former Marine. At that time, maybe had 25 years with the IRS, gruff guy, big mustache. What are you doing? As I'm looking at these books, and I look up meekly, and I'm looking at the Internal Revenue Code and looking at these sections that I'm going to be investigating. And he said, shut that book. You're no longer a CPA, you're an IRS special agent. You don't need to be looking in that book. So that was a culture shock, to say the least. Anyway, I kind of brushed that off and thought, well, I just kept brushing things off, like, well, this must be just an anomaly. Boy, was I wrong. Anyway, shortly after that, I started in San Francisco, California. I was born and raised in San Jose, but actually was hired in the San Francisco office and was sent to Quantico. I wish I was sent to Quantico, where the FBI Academy was. To the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Glencoe, Georgia. That's where many of the federal agencies, other than the DEA and the FBI, train. And of course, now with all of the consolidation of all the agencies, I'm not sure who trains where. But anyway, 10 to 15 years ago, many agents would go to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, and so did I. So there's 2 8-week classes. The first 8 weeks is a criminal investigator training, and I was elected class president, as well as did the graduation speech, earned an expert marksman award, academic average 93, 94%. Really worked hard in that training. And meanwhile, IRS agents, I don't know if you're aware, but they actually once in a while will get audited too. I believe every IRS agent is subjected to a background investigation. Okay, and as part of that background investigation, they want to check and make sure that you've been paying your taxes. So they checked me, and unfortunately, there's a cultural thing going on in the IRS where the IRS special agents they get paid more, they get these really shiny badges, and they get carry a gun around, and so they're pretty cool. And the rest of the IRS really is jealous of them. So here was this opportunity for this IRS auditor to audit me. And so he audits my tax returns, like maybe 1990, 91, 92. And it turned out that because of the economy back then, we had to rent our house. And we had these deductions, depreciation and various expenses. So this IRS agent decided to disallow all those deductions and declare that our rental house was a vacation home. And so I got pretty upset about this because then he claimed that I owed thousands of dollars of back taxes. And that doesn't really look too good with the background investigation. So it turned out that I fought him every step of the way, and they told me, we're going to treat you just like every other taxpayer. And boy, did I find out that was right. But it ended up that I got a $1,000 refund. But I found that not only were all of his allegations completely ridiculous, but I was actually too conservative when I filed the returns, and I ended up being too conservative to the tune of about $1,000. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I learned early on, that IRS agent against IRS agent, but I had all the rights they say I did, and so I took advantage of them and actually beat this guy. But it also let me know what the average person in the public who doesn't have the 3 letters after their name, who doesn't have, just why would you study tax law or accounting if you're not in that line of work? But that puts you at a disadvantage, and here these people are just making up these allegations that have no basis whatsoever. In terms of these first 3 of the 5.5 years that I was there, the so-called pre-Enlightenment days, the IRS might try to claim that I was this bozo and disgruntled, and they didn't treat me that way when it came to awarding me and giving me promotions. Before my 5-year employment anniversary, I had risen to grade 13 from, I believe it was a grade 7. I can't remember if I started at a 5 or a 7. Rose to grade 13, the highest level that you can get to without going into management. Many people approached me and said that I'd be a good candidate for management. Received the Superior Performance Award, Sustained Superior Performance Award. They appointed me the Asset Forfeiture Coordinator for the Central California District of the IRS. I was also the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force Coordinator for the IRS and a Firearms and Defensive Tactics Coordinator. So I thought that I was on the right track, right? Trying to go a little fast so we don't get even worse on our schedule. So just in brief terms, and so I recognize so many faces. You probably heard this story so many times. You're going to vomit, but for those maybe who are listening and haven't heard it, basically I worked for the IRS as a criminal investigator. The IRS trusted me to carry a gun and a badge around. For those people from the San Francisco Bay Area, I was driving on 101 and 280 and all through San Jose and Santa Clara County and San Mateo County, working with various law enforcement agencies. San Mateo County Sheriff's Department, the California Highway Patrol, then federal agencies, the DEA, the U.S. Customs Service, Secret Service. Really, for about 3 years, and being a federal criminal investigator, believing that I was sworn to support and defend the Constitution, but also, of course, protect the Treasury, the U.S. Treasury, and go after tax cheats and money launderers. And for the first 3 years of my career there, that's exactly what I did. And I enjoyed my work, and I felt very fulfilled to be using my financial skills to serve my country in that capacity. Well, it was about December of 1996, a little over 3 years since I had started with the IRS, and I was listening to a KSFO radio station. I believe it's still around. They probably changed the format quite a bit because too many people caught on to the truth. But there was a host there named Jeff Metcalf, Geoff. He spells his name a little differently than other Jeffs. And he had this guest on his show named DV Kidd. D-E-V-V-Y is her first name. DV.com is her website. And Dee, she was on for an hour or two, and she was making all these claims about the federal income tax and the monetary system, and showing how they're kind of joined at the hip, and the illegitimacies about the federal income tax enforcement and the monetary system. And I remember, driving in my government car on US 101. Doing my investigations around East Palo Alto and that area, and listening to her say these things about the income tax. And at this time, certified public accountant, the IRS had appointed me as a special agent, one of their criminal investigators to go after tax cheats and money launderers. And so, my entire professional life revolved around the federal income tax. And yet this DV Kidd woman was making some really outrageous claims about the federal income tax, that it was illegally enforced and administered, and that she kept using the word voluntary. And I thought that was odd because I had that Sig Sauer gun that I showed you, and my handcuffs and bulletproof vest, and I didn't think the tax was too voluntary. So it kind of rubbed me wrong. But the thing is that Jeff Metcalf, if any of you remember him, he is a very honorable man, very truthful, not a partisan kind of guy who says, oh, the Republicans are always right and the Democrats are always wrong. He just looked at the Constitution and the law and was an upfront kind of guy. So that's the reputation that he had built with me. Meanwhile, he's got this, what I thought at the time, crazy lady named D.V. Kidd making these claims about the income tax. And so there was a disconnect there for me. Either I wasn't that good of a criminal investigator because I had misread what Jeff Metcalf was all about, or there was something to what D.V. Kidd was saying about the income tax. Well, neither one of those solutions sounded like the one I wanted, right? But so that's why I had to look into it further. So I ordered D.V. Kidd's booklets that she offered on the radio show, went through them, and of course I've got to kind of keep things moving along. One of my thoughts was, how do I work this? One of my thoughts was, I've got this accounting degree from San Jose State. I'm a certified public accountant. I went through all these background investigations and everything with the IRS. How come I've never heard about this stuff before? And, I came to find out, I'm sure most of you already know the answer to that. There's a purposeful not wanting to share this information with us. So given that I had this investigative training, I decided to start using my investigative skills to simply gather evidence about what D.V. Kidd claimed was true. I basically used the training that the IRS gave me and pursued, went for the truth. I encountered people like Bill Conklin, Bill Benson, Paymon, who you just heard speak, Steve Empling, who you've heard speak, Sean O'Connor. And I learned many things, again, that I was never taught, even though, can you imagine? A certified public accountant. I take all these tests for California to get this CPA certificate, and the IRS puts me through all this training, and yet I really was never shown that there were 50 titles of the United States Code. I was never really shown that there are subtitles to the Internal Revenue Code. There's certain things in subtitle A and certain things in subtitle B. And, I guess they didn't think that I need to know those kinds of things. Kind of like my boss on the first day. Now, as I began to look in, there's not time to talk about all the things that I did to try to get to the truth, to figure out, has the IRS been deceiving me as a special agent and as a citizen? Or is D.V. Kidd full of it? And Jeff Metcalf, he doesn't deserve my trust. What's really going on? So I began to really look closely at many things, including the IRS literature. And I don't know if you've ever looked at the 1040 booklet where it explains all about the 1040 and how to fill it out. There's this nice little message that it has down in the corner. I'm going to read this to you. This publication covers some subjects on which a court may have made a decision more favorable to taxpayers than the interpretation of the IRS. Until these differing interpretations are resolved by higher court decisions or in some other way, this publication will continue to present the interpretation by the IRS. So I want to point that out to you. How many people have ever seen that? Not too many? It's there. It's always there. It's there every year. He's got the book. You can check and see for yourself.
Why don't you move to the other side of the page?
Well, I can't on this presentation, but if during the break you want to show people, feel free.
This side of the page.
But the point is that if you really start scouring, you're going to be amazed at the kind of truths that are there. And given that I was performing this investigation and still working there, I had access to things that weren't, secret or anything like that, but they were certainly more readily accessible than to the average person in the public. So I really went digging, and I found, many things that really concern me.
What was the rest of that paragraph?
All taxpayers have important rights when working with the IRS. These rights are described in your rights as a taxpayer. And then they repeat the IRS mission that they're there to provide top quality service by helping them understand and meet their tax responsibilities, and by applying the tax law with integrity and fairness to all.
That wolf in sheep's clothing.
Anyway, I don't have time to go through many details, but suffice it to say that after about 2.5 years of part-time, off-duty research and investigation about these claims that D.B. Kidd made on the radio, I couldn't help but conclude that there was a mountain of evidence indicating that the IRS was indeed deceiving the public, putting things in small print like I showed you there. I mean, the truth is there, but the average person doesn't even see it. So I guess the IRS thinks that they're off the hook by putting the warning out there. But basically, they're deceiving the public, and they're breaking the law. They're stealing people's property, and that's the evidence that I encountered. So I thought, okay, now that I have come to this conclusion, what am I going to do about it? And so I began to look at the internal employment documents for the IRS to determine, okay, well, when an employee, somebody that works here, comes across something that bothers them, what are they supposed to do? So I came across all kinds of stuff, and again, don't have time to show you it all, but just to give you an idea, this was some training that we were required to attend, okay? And they talked about these 10 core ethical principles. Now, when you're thinking about ethics and morals, wouldn't these be the kind of things that you think of? But how many of these things do you think of the IRS actually practices on a day-to-day basis? I saw a goose egg in the front row. Honesty, integrity, promise-keeping, loyalty, fairness, caring and concern for others, respect for others, civic duty, pursuit of excellence, personal responsibility, accountability. Well, I was really gratified to see that these were the kinds of principles that were in the books about telling people what to do, how to react to the bad things that they might encounter. And so I thought, well, okay, this is good. They adhere, the agency adheres, or at least is supposed to adhere, to the same kinds of definitions of morals and ethics that I thought were there. Okay, we're in good shape. Well, it didn't quite turn out that way, because maybe like so many things in life, in human experience, people don't always follow what's in the book. So what happened was, in a nutshell, I came to these conclusions that there was really a problem. I came to the conclusion that I had a duty, even by the IRS's own employment manuals, I had a duty to do something about it. And I decided that what to do was to speak up, to speak out, to approach my supervisors at the IRS and say, look, this is what I've found. And I need some assistance in finding out, have I made a mistake somewhere along the way in analyzing this? If so, you can help set me on the right track, and I can go back to doing my job. And that was basically what I wanted to do. So I put together a report that I called Investigating the Federal Income Tax, a preliminary report. And I called it preliminary on purpose because I've always considered myself a humble person. I still am. And I'm not a Supreme Court justice. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just an IRS special agent who investigated the situation, and a certified public accountant, a degree in accounting. I've got a fair amount of competence to evaluate these issues, and these are my conclusions. So please, supervisors, please help me understand why I've concluded that things look pretty rotten in Denmark. They look pretty ugly for how the IRS does business. So I submitted, you said conscience. I mean, I really was following those exact principles that were all laid out. Remember them? Personal responsibility, accountability. I mean, and the humility. They didn't put humility in there, but I had it. If they told me, Joe, you're really an idiot. You missed A, B, C, G, and Z. And if you had seen those, then you wouldn't have come to these conclusions. I would have just put my tail between my legs and said, I was an idiot, please forgive me, and move on. But that's not the way it turned out. Well, I submitted this report, and it was basically the highlights. It wasn't everything that I had looked into. It was just a snapshot, some of the highlights of it. But I presented it to my immediate supervisor, and I asked that it be presented up the chain of command, up to and including the commissioner, if possible. And then the allegations were that due to constitutional limitations, most Americans are not required to file income tax returns and pay income tax. 16th Amendment was never legally ratified, and the U.S. government finances its operations from the unconstitutional creation of fiat money.
Joe, just for clarification, that's what you came up with? Those are the conclusions you came up with?
In your preliminary?
Yeah, I basically synthesized what I had found during those 2 years into those 3 points, and wrote a report to support why I thought that was true.
What was the third one? I missed that.
U.S. government finances its operations from the unconstitutional creation of fiat money, not with revenue from income taxes. So I wrote a letter along with and submitted it with my report, and I basically said, I've gone to bat for this agency and the income tax, and I've tried to use all of my skills to discredit these so-called tax protester beliefs, and I've not been able to do so. So please, bosses, help me out. Well, the response to that was that they would, I also said, if you can't help me, I'm going to have to resign, because I can't serve two masters here. I've concluded one thing, you're telling me another. I can't go forward. So they actually took me up on my statement about resignation. They said, we'd be more than happy to provide you with the paperwork to tender your resignation, and we're not going to respond to any of your concerns. And they sent me home for administrative leave for a week. So while I was at home that week, I decided that, although I have pretty good trust for the people that I work with, I really don't trust the agency based on what I've learned. And I think I better resign while I still have a good reputation, so that somebody might believe me as I speak about this in the future. So I did resign. I issued my resignation letter to Commissioner Rosati.
What'd your wife say?
Another thing I don't have time to talk about. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty. I put my family through a great deal of suffering to become an IRS special agent. I took a $30,000 to $40,000 pay cut. I was gone for 16 weeks of training while we had a newborn, a second child. It was a nightmare for my family to put up with my desire to be a federal agent. And then I have to come home and say, honey, the federal income tax is a fraud. It wasn't pretty. Quickly, people, even in my family, would ask me, why did this happen to you? Why are you speaking up about this? What's going on here? And I didn't know what it was. I just felt I was doing what I was supposed to do, what God would expect me to do to, not bear false witness against my neighbor. But what's interesting, I found out that the very same day that the 16th Amendment was proclaimed to be ratified was February 25th, 1913. And I was born on February 25th, 1963, 50 years later. And here's the little stamp to prove it. This is from Bill Benson's book, The Law That Never Was. So I did resign and struggled, financially, because I just resigned cold turkey. And but with God's help, eventually able to make a living and support the family. And put together this website, still exists to this day, josephbanister.com, and came up with this little slogan, "Feeling Outgunned." Interestingly, sadly, I guess especially now, there weren't that many IRS agents and no special agents, the gun carriers that would actually look into these issues, let alone adopt them and then speak up about them. So I did get some media attention, C-SPAN, 60 Minutes 2, New York Times, MSNBC, And of course, this is in conjunction with many others. I mean, there are so many other people that I don't have time to mention who have worked so hard, including many of you here in the audience, supporting our efforts to try to do things the right way, to get redress for these grievances. There were full-page ads that the We the People Foundation for Constitutional Education, headed up by Robert Schulz, put together. And there was this Truth and Taxation hearing. And I'm sorry, but I have to kind of zip through this stuff. But the bottom line was that, again, I was just trying to adhere to those principles. I was trying to do what the law told a citizen to do, or even an IRS special agent to do, when they saw wrongdoing. And I've been pursuing that ever since. But the government hasn't reacted to it too well, too favorably. What this stuff that I'm showing you here is basically the Roscoe Bartlett, the congressman from Maryland, who promised to hold these truth and taxation hearings on Capitol Hill and then backed out. And then that was just prior to September 11th, the devastation on September 11th. You can see the date there is July 20th, 2001. So this was going on in the summer. So the man supports, defends the Constitution, abides by his oath, exposes the truth. Give that man a medal, right? So the IRS filed a civil complaint against me. I should back up just to say that once in a while I would assist people with their IRS problems. I didn't pursue that kind of work. It kind of gave me the willies. I didn't really like it. I didn't like what the IRS was doing to people, and I felt kind of powerless to stop it. If I felt I could stop it, then I'd be happy to do it. But I didn't want to just, take people's money for a fee and then not be able to do anything for them. But occasionally people just really, yanked on my arm, and I did the best I could. So for that, the IRS filed a civil complaint against me, claiming that I had engaged in misconduct. And then they didn't put enough in the original complaint, so they had to amend the complaint. And they were mad because I failed to file a federal income tax return for 1999, 2000, 2001, and 2002. They filed this in 2003. Well, the nice, wonderful thing about IRS allegations is that so much of what they allege, they have no need to prove in a court of law. They can do so much of what they do administratively, and that's what they did to me. So this civil complaint process is done administratively. There's no actual judge that hears it. The IRS just conducts it on its own. And one of the things they did, there's supposed to be a hearing, right? You think that in America you actually get a hearing. You get to confront your accuser. And that the public can come to see this bad guy that's accused, right? Well, for some unknown reason, they wanted to hold the hearing for the civil complaint on Coast Guard Island in San Francisco Bay. And there's the proof. Now I thought it seemed odd that the IRS, who was trying to protect the public from me, wouldn't want the public to see me go through this hearing and see how little defense I had for all these terrible things I had done. But they wanted to keep the public away and hold the hearing on a secure military base on Coast Guard Island. Well, thankfully, with much support from people like yourselves, maybe some of you actually even assisted, there were all kinds of phone calls, faxes to the IRS, to the Congress people, saying, what's going on here? This mild-mannered CPA, you're going to take him to this Coast Guard Island for this hearing. There's something bad going on here. So the IRS decided to change the hearing location to 450 Golden Gate, the federal building in San Francisco. How nice of them. Well, once they changed the hearing location, then they decided to just not give me a hearing at all. And so the government filed a motion for summary judgment, and this administrative law judge from, get this, the Environmental Protection Agency, that was the adjudicator of my case, he granted the motion for summary judgment. And a motion for summary judgment, for those that may not know, it's basically, Your Honor, there's no dispute of the facts whatsoever, and so you just need to rule on the law. And so the judge ruled that the law says because you've done all these things and the facts don't disagree, you should be disbarred. So this administrative law judge, William B. Moran from the Environmental Protection Agency, disbarred me from practice before the IRS. Little technicality is that the IRS doesn't have a bar. Yeah, but they disbarred me from their non-existent bar anyway. I never applied to be on their bar, in their bar, or on top of their bar.
Well, you could.
Or under their bar.
There was nothing to apply.
There's nothing to apply to, exactly. But I was disbarred. And of course, you think about it, the average person in the public, sadly, when they see that you've been disbarred, it doesn't matter if you've been disbarred from the sandbox, you're done for. So I appealed. The next step in the process is to appeal to the Secretary of the Treasury. Told them my grievances. No hearing. Didn't even get to testify. A lot of this stuff is on my website, by the way, at agentfortruth.com or freedomabovefortune.com. So I appealed to the Secretary of the Treasury, right? Well, who answered my appeal? An IRS attorney. It says it right on the top of the fax. IRS Chief Counsel. He ruled on my appeal to the Secretary of the Treasury. Now, interestingly, remember I told you about the original complaint and the amended complaint? Well, the original complaint was that I conducted misconduct, acted disreputably, and he said that was true. But the amended complaint that I had not filed tax returns for all these years, he actually did away with. They didn't want to deal with that for some reason. Still wondering why. But as I said before about its perception, the IRS puts out this press release that says the Treasury Department denied my appeal, not the IRS, as you saw in the facts. So the IRS spells justice, of course, R-A-I-L-R-A. I really only have a couple minutes left, so I'm just going to say briefly that in addition to the civil situation, I was indicted on criminal charges that I conspired to defraud the United States of America and that I prepared 3 false federal income tax returns. Thankfully, this is the one way you can actually get a little due process and your peers to look at your conduct is by getting criminally prosecuted. So if you're ever really itching to get some due process and your fellow citizens to look at your conduct, just get prosecuted. So thankfully, that's why I am grateful that we do still have some rights. You may think that we don't, but we have a right to a jury, we have a right to counsel, and we have a right to prepare our defense, confront our accusers. And I did all those things. But the problem for them is they train me too well. That's all my evidence that I gathered prior to being prosecuted.
Hey.
And I just got to jump through this, but they had no case. It was really sickening. Were they to do that to someone else? I mean, I'm going to put up with whatever I asked for it, by raising my hand. But their case was a joke, and the jury could see it. The agents testified when they said they were pointedly asked, "Did you see any evidence of conspiracy?" No. Why are we here? The jury asked themselves. So I've got to... a lot of this stuff is on my website. There's the not guilty verdicts, June 23rd, 2005. I love this. This is the Sacramento Bee. There's a real, if you don't know it already, there's a real marriage between the media and the government in telling the public what they want the public to believe and know. So, of course, I always invite people to verify the information for yourselves. You don't need to believe me, but you might at least take my little speech as an indication that maybe you should look into these issues. That is, if you're concerned about the truth and about whether your fellow Americans are being railroaded by our government. Infect the jury pool with the truth. If you get called to a jury, serve on it. I always encourage people to pray daily to God. He's the ultimate source for justice. Don't take the Lord's name in vain. Support those on the front line. Support Truth Attack. You're going to be hearing Tom Cryer. And then the Freedom Above Fortune radio show is at lwrn.net, Saturday mornings. I pre-recorded it. That's why I didn't have to wake up early this morning and take care of that. Liberty Works Radio Network. Tell people to watch America Freedom to Fascism if you haven't done so already. And then freedomabovefortune.com. You can join my mailing list, or agentfortruth.com. And thank you, and may God bless you.